and executive producer and co-showrunner, Sarah Sutherland. Welcome. And this guy is so busy. He not only has movies debuting at South by Southwest, he has another series he's working on. You may have heard of The Morning Show and Chip here. And a terrific actor and producer in his own right and everything in this business, from indie movies to television to big movies to whatever you want. Mark Duplass. And you all know her, and you certainly know her if for the last 100 years you've been watching Grey's Anatomy. A show that will never go off the air, apparently, and it's such a good show. And I wanted to see her before, but I was doing this panel because I wanted to get some medical advice from her, but maybe here. Anyway, she is executive producer and plays Christine Barnett. Please welcome Ellen Pompeo. First of all, so happy to have all of you here, and what a fascinating story this is. And it continues, I guess, as this is on the air. But let me start with you, Ellen, because something fascinating had to happen to bring you outside of Grey's Anatomy to a series like this. I know you don't have to do all this stuff, but this one struck a nerve, clearly, and made you want to participate. Can you talk about this and what it was before I show a clip?
Sure. I think that people are under the impression that I get all sorts of offers all the time, and I just chose not to ever do anything different because I'm so in love with Grey's. And I am in love with Grey's. It's only been 21 years, too. Not I can't let you age me.
Oh, I exaggerate.
Anyway, I think being on a show for a long time like that, you get stuck in a box, obviously, and people assume you're not available, or you are typecast and no one's interested because you have been playing this same character for so long and no one can visualize you as anything different. So there aren't a lot of offers.
Really?
Not for me, anyway. Maybe for other people. So the wonderful executives at the company that I work for, Disney and Hulu and ABC Television, knew that I was getting very restless and I had stepped back from my commitment on Grey's to pursue other things. And they presented me with this offer. And I thought, if I'm ever going to convince anybody that I can do something else, I'd better take a big swing. And if I'm going to prove to myself that I can do something else, I have to take a big swing. And this certainly was that.
It's definitely that. And people are seeing that as this show unfolds on Hulu. Let's take a look at your work here and all of your work here in Good American Family. Sarah, give me a little log line on this that brought this to you, because it is a true story. Christine and Michael Barnett live, and they are real people, and the story is real. Can you just give us a little background for those who haven't seen it?
I'm going to give this to Katie, the creator. Okay, thanks. So this story, Hulu brought me the story in 2020 about this family who had adopted a young girl from Ukraine with a rare form of dwarfism, and things go terribly awry, as you see in the show. And when they brought it to me, it was kind of in the popular consciousness, but not quite as much. And so I had to do quite a deep dive into figuring out what the story was about. And so I read tons of articles and watched tons of clips. And one thing that I found that was so extraordinary is that you would read an interview with the parents and you'd be like, oh my gosh, this version of the story is absolutely true. This is the truth. And then you'd go and read an interview with Natalia or see her on Dr. Phil, and you'd be like, no, I'm totally wrong. This is what this is. And I found that experience really fascinating, and I wanted to try to bring that into the storytelling here, because I think that we are so primed to make snap judgments about things, just to read the headline and be like, okay, this is the truth, and not ask questions. And I think that's really damaging and makes us lose a sense of empathy, and also kind of detracts from the idea of empirical truth. You stop caring about facts when you cease asking questions. And so that was the sort of shape of the story that I wanted to try to tell here.
And Sarah, too, you are taking some dramatic license here. We're not looking, there is a documentary series and all of that out there, but we're not looking at this as 100%. This is your take on this.
Right, yeah. So we did a lot of research to try to get the sense of what really happened. We had somebody on the ground in Indiana. We had all the documents that are part of the discovery process. And the challenge for us as writers was to try to sit with the material and figure out what's the human story here, what's the emotional truth. And Katie's idea to start the show from one person's perspective, from the Barnett's perspective, and then switch that at a certain point, I think was this very clever way of taking the audience on a journey of really grappling with their own bias in sort of a meta way.
It's very Rashomon of you.
Thank you.
No one got that reference? Okay.
Well, listen, if there's one thing that sells a show in this environment, it's saying we're just like Rashomon. That's what they're looking for.
Sorry, my day job's as a film critic. Mark, while you're talking here, talk about this because this is a very complex guy and he goes through a lot of changes family-wise and everything that happens to him, which I imagine as an actor is fun to play.
I mean, I was very honored to take on this role for a number of reasons. I mean, I was very taken with Katie and Sarah's approach to the story and the dignity that they brought to it and the amount of work. I was super excited to work with this asshole over here. Guys, has the highest integrity meter of someone I work with in a long time. You know, you get to this point in the industry where we've been doing this for a while. She makes a good paycheck. She doesn't really have to come do this. And when it's time for lunch and you kind of want one more take, most people at this time in our lives are like, that's good enough. Let's go to lunch. And Ellen's like, no, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this better. And that I just love that. So all of those things were incredible for me. In terms of the character of Michael, I had a lot of inroads that were personally interesting to me. I saw someone who had a lifelong struggle with mental health, which is something I've dealt with as well. I saw someone who's coming from a place of strong familial trauma and trying to transcend that and be a better father and do things right for the next generation, having very low skill sets in order to do that, and how frustrating that is. That was really appealing to me. And I think that I saw this guy who the public sort of has an opinion of, due to this documentary. And I can have a lot of empathy for everyone in this show. And I can see how their approach to show it all from different perspectives, if you stick through this show, and if you watch it through till episode 8, which was the experience I had in reading all these episodes, what the payoff was gonna be. And I haven't really been a part of something like that before, where I was like, okay, wow, if we can get everybody to episode 8, this is gonna be really special.
It's so cool, and of course you mentioned working with Ellen here, and for you, since we're talking about the different perspectives, Christine's an really interesting character, and she's real. Did you have any interaction with the real person here and talking about this, or you just had to go on what the scripts and the story you knew?
No interaction at all.
Did you want it?
Not really.
Yeah, because who knows what the story would be. So what was your approach as an actor?
One thing that I find really fascinating about not only the character of Christine that I was playing, but people in general, particularly now we see a lot of this, is people who are villains really see themselves as victims. It's this really interesting psychology. It's so glaring to me. These people just make these terrible choices, these unthoughtful choices, and they're just convinced that they are the victim. And I find that fascinating. And so that was something that I really used in my version of Christine was that it couldn't possibly be me. It has to be everybody else, because everything I do is righteous and perfect, and I think we see a lot of that.
Yeah, it's fascinating to do that. Yeah, you can find after watching
Everybody's in terrible relationships out there, you can tell. You know, when you're in that fight with someone and they go, "Oh, I'm the asshole," like it's clicking, isn't it?
Yeah, but Sarah, I saw you nodding your head in total agreement with what she was talking about here.
Yeah, it was a thing that we talked about a lot in the writer's room, just this idea that one of the most insidious things about bias is that it's so often unconscious, that we move through the world thinking we are right. And I think in this moment in history, as a country, that feels especially sad.
And just to add to that, I think that there's a line that comes in an episode that hasn't aired quite yet, where a character says that you have to pay attention to who is telling the story. That like the truth doesn't always matter if you tell the story really well. And that, I think, in a show that deals with a lot of creepy, horror adjacent things, like that is the most horrifying thing that we talk about in the show. At the end of the day, is that the truth doesn't matter if somebody tells the story well enough.
And I'd just like to add on the point of bias and unconscious bias. We often talk a lot, hopefully we do, about our unconscious bias regarding race. Very rarely do we ever highlight our unconscious bias on people with disabilities or people that look different than us. And that's another thing that I loved about the show and about telling this story was it was very important. We should mention Imogen Faith Reed. This was her first lead role. And we're all so grateful for her and her wanting to be a part of telling this story, because without her, this show does not work. And she was committed to telling Natalia Grace's truth and showing empowerment and what this story meant to her, someone who lives and walks around the world with dwarfism. So I love that we touch on all of our unconscious bias. Why do we believe what we believe about someone else based on the fact that they may look different from us or may have different abilities than us?
We're living in a time now where truth is your truth, and facts are your facts. And there's a lot of things, and we don't know how to juggle all this anymore. And I thought this series is incredibly relevant to it. In other words, it's the right time to tell this story, or stories, however you want to put it. Because a few weeks ago, Natalia Grace was on the cover of People magazine telling her story again. And, and that's on the newsstands as you're rolling out these episodes. That's kind of an interesting conundrum, I think.
Yeah, I mean, to the point of the different perspectives in this story and the way that it was structured, it's such a daring swing, and it's something I love about this show. We've aired 4 episodes so far, right. And on Wednesday night, everything is going to shift. We're going to see something quite different in the show, and I think it was such a bold way to do it, because this is how we receive the news. You just get this big fire hose of opinions that is presented to you as truth. And unless you change the channel and show something else, that's just what you're going to believe. And there are a lot of people watching this show right now who are convinced what has happened in the first 4 episodes is the truth. But it's just from Christine and Michael's perspective. And that's about to change. And that was really exciting.
Wow. Hulu is going to love you, Mark. That's one of the best teases I've heard.
None of it is true, but I'm going to get you to tune in. It's going to be
You got to watch to the end on this show. You have to watch to the end to get a sense of where things land.
To get it, which is the beauty of limited series as well. That format, which has come into play in such a major way here now, and it gives so much opportunity to actors to do different stuff and creators.
Yeah, it's such a gift, and like as all of the things that you're talking about and the things that you're kind of pulling out that the show is about, like to get to tell this story with this group of people was like one of the great gifts of our creative lives. And I think that, to try to create work that has something to say about our society is like what we want to do as artists. So it was a really extraordinary experience.
Good American Family on Hulu. Tune in Wednesday night.
Los Angeles, which we're all also so happy to be able to act.
So, that's